Welcome to The Spotlight, the show that brings you voices of those who truly feed our nation, our small-scale farmers. Whether you're a farmer, a consumer, or just someone who cares about where your food comes from, this show is for you. This is The Spotlight, where small-scale farmers lead the discussion towards a just and resilient food system.
Hello viewers, welcome to The Spotlight. Today's episode is brought to you by ESAF Uganda in partnership with Alliance for Food Sovereignty in Africa, AFSA. In this episode, we want to understand how food safety and standards shape our cross-border trade, especially in the East African community. And today I'll be joined by two guests. We have Badru Zuhu, cross-border trader from Busia, and Mwambali Bernard, very passionate fellow about food safety. So I invite you to introduce yourselves. Badru, you can go first.
Thank you so much. My name is Mbatude Zuhu Badru. I'm a trader and I'm the chairperson of Busia Women Cross-Border Cereals Traders Cooperative. And we deal in so many things. We deal in maize, beans, sorghum, groundnuts, rice, and anything that moves as long as it's edible. We cross across the borders. And you know what food is. It must be safe, nutritious, and that kind of thing. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you, Badru. Mr. Bernard, you're welcome.
Thank you once again for inviting us to this important spotlight. My name is Bernard Wambale. I serve with Consent. Consent is a consumer protection organization here in Uganda, but I'm also the national coordinator for the Food Safety Coalition of Uganda, an umbrella body that brings together different actors that are actually doing some bit of work on food safety to make sure that we have one voice, we're speaking the same to ensure that the community members, our consumers, have access to safe and nutritious food across the country, but also the people we are supporting with food in other countries. So great to be here again.
Thank you so much, Bernard. So for today's episode, we are really sharing out this to a wider audience. It's not designated to a specific group of people. As we move into the festive season, consumption is really going to take a toll on everything we are doing. But it is very important for us to, keep in mind that the food we consume has to be safe for both human beings and also the environment around us. And I just want you to help us understand what is food safety and why do you think it matters in regional trade?
Yeah, sure. Well, so thank you very much. The issue of food safety is very, very critical for all of us. Number one, every time we talk about food safety, what are we even talking about? What do we mean? Those practices that we do, either at our homes, in the market, on the farm, whatever we are doing out there, to make sure that the food we are giving out to the people does not cause them disease, or the food we are giving out to the people is not contaminated with different things, either microorganisms or whatever. So basically, when you talk about food safety, that is what we are looking at, providing people with food that is not contaminated. Now, our food can be contaminated by different things, so what we call now the food safety hazards. Now, one of them would be the physical hazards, things that you can see. They are in food, but they're not supposed to be in food. For instance, you have food and then there is sand or soil. You have food and then you find stones. You have food and then you find feathers. Yeah, you've seen food and then you're buying beans, but then you reach home and the beans have some sort of feathers from birds or whatever. Or sometimes you have food. Initially, it is assumed to be food, but then you find droppings of birds, droppings of animals.
Human hair.
Human hair.
Yeah.
You buy a let's say kabalagala or a pancake, and then you find a strip of hair. Then you start asking yourself, where did the hair come from? Is it from the head or elsewhere? I mean, now those are called physical contaminants. So you can have food which is meant for human beings, but you find those physical contaminants. And what's wrong with those physical contaminants? Just imagine you chew pancake and then there's a stone. And this is a 5-year-old child chewing stones. Anything can happen. That stone can actually pluck out a tooth of a person. Imagine you're chewing rice and then you find sand. What does this consumer feel? You're consuming sand, but it's not supposed to be consumed. So all those are challenges that come with physical hazards. But also we have what we call biological hazards. Now, biological hazards are basically to do with bacteria, viruses in food. Sometimes even fungus. You find fungus in food. You've seen, for instance, bread, and then bread has mold. Or you've seen maize, and the maize has mold. Now, that is a sign of contamination of the food. And it's just because of poor handling. Someone didn't handle food the way they were supposed to handle it. And when you see mold on your food, please throw it away. Now, some people now cut a piece, the piece that has mold, and then they consume the balance.
In this economy, we can't afford
And that
to
is
make
more
a loss.
suicidal, because you see, in the economy, when the economy is biting like this, and you continue eating that kind of contamination, the amount of money you spend in the hospital is more than the money you would have spent if you threw it away. So those are now what we are calling the physical, rather the biological contaminants. Now, we also have what we call chemical contaminants. Now, with chemical contaminants, what we are basically saying is, how are we using chemicals in our food? Yeah? So you find a lot of our food sometimes having chemical contaminants. Take an example. You've heard how people are using paraffin or kerosene in preservation of beans or cereals. Now, kerosene is fuel that is supposed to be in the lamp, is supposed to be in the tadoba, is supposed to be used for cookery. And now it is a fuel that people are using to preserve the beans. We've seen that beans, some of the traders end up having rodent poisons. Like you've seen in Uganda, they call it chiweke, rodent poisons. And then someone is putting it in the beans. But this is a chemical that is ideally supposed to kill rats. Now for you, you've put it in human food. Now a human being is going to consume the beans, but alongside the chiweke. Now at the end of the day, the person who is consuming the food is getting affected by the poison that you've actually put in the food. Similarly, we have seen people, for instance, milk, let's talk about milk or meat, and someone gets formaldehyde, what you call formalin, which we use in hospitals, for instance, in preservation of human dead bodies. And someone is putting it in meat, is putting it in milk, is putting it in food, you know. Now, a person is consuming food, which is ideally supposed to be nutritious and providing nutrition, but then the person is taking it with formalin, a chemical that if it's accumulating in our bodies, it may lead us into cancers and all these other inflammations of the body. But these are the ingredients that someone is putting in the food that is serving to the human being. So when you're talking about chemical contamination, those are some of them. We have also seen it in the tomatoes. Someone is getting mancozeb, a chemical, a fungicide, and is putting it on top of a tomato in a market. Now, the fungicide was supposed to kill fungi, and now for you putting it on top of a tomato that is going to be consumed by a human being. You get it? So a human being is taking a tomato, which is supposed to be nutritious, but then you are eating it alongside mancozeb, a chemical that is so disastrous to life of a human being. So whenever you're talking about those chemical contaminants, that is probably what we tend to refer to. But of course, there are other chemicals. You know very well that if you go to the eastern part of this country, you go to the north, you go to the west, you will find people, including traders, by the way, getting maize or getting cassava or getting potatoes, and then they dry them on top of a road, and more so a tarmac road. So every time there is a lot of heat, the tarmac is heating up, the tarmac is melting, and so the tar that is used to make the colas or the tarmac road, it erodes from the roads and then it goes into human food. So someone is consuming posho or maize or whatever, but alongside the chemical that is coming from the tar. So those are now, all of those make up the chemical contaminants. And of course, we need to be careful. How do we support our communities, our traders, to know, to have information around this? So in this, first of all, in this Christmas season, how are we handling food? which preservatives are we using as traders? We are lucky that we have a trader here. So how are we managing the food of our people? Which preservatives are you using? How are you making sure that there are no stones, no sand, no feathers, no droppings, no chemicals in the food that you're delivering to the people? The more you add those things, the more you make the food and safe for consumption for our consumers. So I think that is the preamble on food safety.
Yeah, thank you so much, Bernard. And what I've picked is when we talk about food safety, especially for the traders, it's not only about making profits, but most importantly, it's relating to human health.
Exactly.
So, Badru, what could be some of those challenges you have witnessed as a trader when it comes to, you know, complying to food safety and standards within this cross-border trade?
Thank you so much, Naomi. We have several challenges that we face as traders. It varies from stage to stage, you know, the food value chain and the food path. Right from the garden, when you're going to pick the product from the farmers, some of them harvest premature plants. And when they are premature, even the water moisture content is high. And when it's high, it will develop aflatoxins. So that's a challenge for us traders. And then it will cut the kilograms. You know, for us, we're after profits, but also health. Now, when it comes to transportation, some of the traders are so mean that they want to either minimize costs. I don't know that they're either inhuman. They will transport both the food and also the animals within the same truck. Sometimes they get cheaper as they go to buy to Mubende, where they encounter cheaper goats. Yeah, the cheap cow. Now it's like, let me use 1 stone to kill 2 birds. Then
I know. I see.
I see that.
Yeah.
Then in transportation sector first,
True.
Where will the food be safe? As you're transporting your maize or beans, these cows or the goats, they are urinating inside. As he said, contamination of all types. Now, we also have a challenge of people like adding kilograms. We have stopped from transporting. Because transporting section, we also have what we call packing. When they are packaging, what type of thing are they using to pack? Some of them don't use even bags. They just pour in the truck. Now as they're pouring the truck, then the boys, kabedas, they call them kabeda. Those boys will be on top of the what?
The food.
The food. And when they want to go for a short call, they just stand like this and then what about the drippings? Is that safe?
It's tricky, yeah.
It's tricky.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
And then some of them sleep in those trucks as that travel, they're avoiding what. So when we come to also, we have finished with the packaging and then transporting, mixing with different trucks. It depends on the type of produce you're transporting, because we have both those and that are perishable so fast. Come to storage. Storage is another thing that brings when we talk of food safety and food security, when the storage is bad, human health is in danger. Now, some of the traders, us who go to trade, they will show you very clean products. But as you're busy noting, doing your other things like logistics, they chip in these other bags that you've not inspected. That are very damp, with the molds, as he said. And when you carry groundnuts, you know, people, we do processing also. People like cheap things. Cheap things are not cheap. In agriculture, when a groundnut has molds, broken and has molds, since it has not dried well, they will process OD, sell it cheaply. And you leave the other one selling it expensively because they're selling it with the whole grain. Now, as storage is there, the pallets are not there, some of them. So then the aeration is very poor. That also is a challenge. Now, when we come to our stores themselves, I told you about all the stages. Now, we buy from different farmers, we buy from other associate cooperatives. Eh? Now, when you reach out, they like adding weight. When you look at millet with well-sorted soil, that red soil, you cannot see the difference. Eh? They put. And then when you come to rice, some people are really very horrible. When you come to rice, there are some certain type of sand, they are very small. They will mix there at least some kilograms. If you are going to take like tons, and even if they put there like 20 kilograms, you don't know. For them, it is profit. But for you, you've made the laws since you know what they call standardization. And these products will not meet the standard of ESA in other countries. That's a big challenge. We have another challenge as traders of you know, we have this, I don't know how to tell you. When we come to preservative, when you're going to buy, you want your maize or beans to stay longer to meet the market. Eh? Yeah. These preservatives here, we don't have them that are of human consumption. As long as you know this, he talked of formerly for a dead person. For you alive, how do you eat for a dead person? Not even maize. We have that chemical there. We have these people from Kenya, when they come, they just come and they book a hollow garden. You know, poverty is a big disease. Poverty can make you do anything. Poverty can make you even sell your child.
Yeah.
Butter trade. You tell the other, I give you my wife for only 2 hours, I give you money. Now, even when these people go to gardens, for us who go to gardens, if you're not really having what they call, by the way, I also serve with the humanity. I'm on board of Uganda Red Cross Society, Busia branch. So when you have that thing of humanity, you will be very careful, because why are you giving others what is harmful and you cannot eat it? It saturates back. We have talked of the sandy inside the maize, and the beans, they will carry all the stock of I don't know which year, all the stock, and then mix up with the new stock. And this one has all the bean weevils, they have all the types of contamination. Now, unless you're very keen, since you buy in bulk, that's a challenge. We also have a challenge of this, they call it documentation, a lot of bureaucracy. Now, you who is a trader and you're doing cross-border trade, and there's this bureaucracy thing here, the documentation, the procedures, you just shortcut.
Yeah, those are real challenges, by the way.
It's real on the ground.
Yeah. And I also understand in trade, in cross-border trade, you are not working alone. You are working in cooperatives. I've at least engaged some cooperatives from Busia. And I just want you to share with us, how are the cooperatives helping you as traders to address some of these challenges? Would like to pick a special interest on women and youth, and then people with disabilities.
Thank you so much, Naomi. How the cooperatives have helped. Number one, we have what we call collective buying and collective selling. When you have it, it will help you in bargaining. That's number one. The cooperatives, even if you have 1 kilogram or 10 or 5, you bring and add on the others who have accumulated. Now, when you're selling, you have the power to say, we are not selling to substandard work. And this one will help on what they call food safety. Because for us, we make sure that we look at the quality of a product. If you brought a wrong product, and we also have good price. So for us to buy from you, you have to give us good product. Now, how have these ones benefited the women and the youths? One, I told you, collective buying and collective selling. You get profit. It also reduces expenses in terms of transport. Are you seeing that? A truck is very expensive. You can't for small scale traders. But if you're many, you can hire like a truck that has 25 tons, and then you divide up. The other one has either 3 tons, another one 10. You put to collect the 25, you reduce the transport costs. Then also it's security. This is cooperative when you want to access a loan. It's security. Eh? You have collateral security. For us women and the disabled people at the border there, wewe pia ni binadamu. Are you a human being? It's a man to talk. Eh? You know, at the borders, when you stand, you have your goods, and then he's a broker. Eh? They will look at him because he's a man, but I'm the mugaga. Because I'm a female, they will attend to him more than me. Eh? So, but since now it's a cooperative, there's security. Should anybody cheat you, eh? You talk as a voice. There's security. And also, when you're a cooperative, it helps to have wider markets. Eh? Networking, collaborating. You also connect to other cooperatives. Eh? Yes. And also food security for ourselves. You cannot be in a cooperative and you will see, first of all, we do it, we sell it together, but we also have personal stores. Because you cannot give out what you don't have. Isn't it? You cannot give out what you don't have. So you must be first of all in a business, and then you move out. And then another thing is that this cooperative helps us to meet other different stakeholders. Eh? It's very easy to talk as a group, and then you meet those stakeholders, most especially the customs officials. Yes, you have like dialogues. You tell them what you should stop harassing us. You tell them what you don't like, and they also tell you what we are doing, which is wrong. As a cooperative, it's very easy to mobilize people to deliver the information. Eh? Yeah. You're knowledgeable when you're many. When you move alone, you get lost. Eh? So it's very easy to get for you information, accessibility to information when you're in a cooperative. Like the commercial officer can just come and say, we have this and this. Even you get government programs like PDM, Myoga. Eh? Yes. Recent we had this one here called GROW. Yeah. Yes. I don't want to talk about GROW, but it's also there. But when a woman, when you go to a bank, they will ask you for your husband. Mm-hmm. What about if I'm single? Don't I do business? Yeah? So this narrative of the dominant narrative of that women should be marginalized, it should go off. We should now turn to what we call a complex narrative. We have a right to do business. Previously doing business as a woman, cross-border trade like produce, they will call you a prostitute, they will call you manamba. You know what manamba is? Eh? Somebody who is very hard, who is uncontrollable. But when you're in a cooperative, eh, it also helps you to learn about certain etiquettes. Eh? Yeah, you yes. Yes. Eh? So then self-care and wellness, that component also is also brought up. The gender-based issue, you get the information from there. Because you cannot differentiate, you cannot separate these two. Gender-based violence with the business. A man will see a wife going for business and has money, will say that a woman who has money is uncontrolled. Which is different. Once we see that we keep on supplementing on each other.
Yeah, sure.
Where there's a gap, this one comes in. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Badru. Those are very, really rich insights.
Sure.
We see how cooperatives are playing a key role in uniting traders. You know, it's very hard for you to trade alone and go a long way. But when you work as a team, you really have a lot to achieve and celebrate. So now back to you, Mr. Bwambale.
Yes.
On the technical side of things.
Yeah.
We've had the challenges that traders are facing, but we also recognize that across the East African community, much as we are talking about standards and food safety, they are really not, we are not speaking the same language as a community.
Sure.
So maybe you could share with us what could be some of those key steps that we can take as a regional bloc to address some of these challenges and
Sure.
also make sure that information reaches a wider audience, because if people don't know what is happening, nobody's going to change. We shall think the normal is very okay.
Well, thanks. It's quite broad, but I want to thank our guest for really giving us the picture on the ground. And when she was, of course, bringing in her submissions, I remembered many things again. And, you know, the farmers and traders, while they think that they are saving costs, they are actually increasing cost for their boss, who's the consumer or their customer at the end of the day. And that's what we forget. And also they forget that actually they are consumers themselves. So I saw in some community where your fellow traders and some farmers had resorted to using, you know what we call glyphosate, the roundups. Now using those chemicals, for instance, to dry cereal, because the traders are saying, no, now this is this market. No, there is need for maize because the schools are what? Are starting. So then they can get maize which is not dried, as she said, and so they can easily dry it with Roundup in a second, in a few minutes or in a few hours. But then they forget that actually their children are going back to school and they will find their maize in those schools. And so our children then go to those schools, and you are the trader who put probably the glyphosate, and your child finds it in a school X. And then a few months later, the child gets sick and they send him back to home for medication. So all the money that you got goes back to Mulago. So that is how expensive unhealthy practices can actually be. Now, the problem could be that we do not have enough awareness. There is need for extensive awareness across the East African community, by the way, because the food is coming from Uganda to Kenya to Tanzania to wherever, but also some food is coming from Kenya, Tanzania, Congo, Sudan. So it means that if we are creating awareness, then the awareness should not only be in Uganda, because also we're going to bring the food from elsewhere. So there should be kind of a communal awareness, but of the same message. We must have harmonized awareness creation programs. Not everybody just having a small section. It should be, by the way, a mass community awareness on issues of food safety across the region. That is one. Two, there is need for capacity building. If, for instance, I am doing cross-border trade, do we have capacity, for instance, as a country, to test the safety of the products at the border? Do we have the testing kits at the border points? If yes, are they functional? There is a risk of having these, you know, we set up so many things, supported by civil society and whatever, but the functionality of the equipment that we put on the border. Do we have sufficient equipment to measure, for instance, aflatoxin content in maize at the border point? If yes, do we have the technical part? Do we have the technical people to actually test? Let me just give you a case scenario. In, I think last year, if not 2023, we lost a lot of tons of maize that were going to Kenya. And the maize was bounced at the border because of the high levels of aflatoxins. Now, we know that we have a unified standard on aflatoxin content, 10 parts per billion. Now, our question was, how did our food leave the country only to be bounced the other side? Does it mean we didn't have the technical expertise to test? Does it mean we didn't have equipment to test? What exactly happened? Last year alone, we have a group of farmers here in Central. They gathered 90 tons of maize, and they had already a market in Nairobi. But the condition was we need to meet the standard for aflatoxins. They gathered all this maize, but can you imagine that our maize went up to 30 parts per billion? 30, beyond 10, we had gone to 20, we had even skipped 30. Some samples were even going to 50. You get it? But the standard is there. We have a standard in place, and the standard is harmonized for all the East African community. But how did we send maize of high levels of aflatoxins only to be boused by the other member country. We are not meeting the standard. Now the question is, how did UNBS, for instance, or how did our technical team allow this maize to cross? Can we say that this maize crossed out of what you call the one you sneak, the one you sneak? Yes. Could we say that? So the issue of capacity is very important. So capacity in terms of technological capacity, but also in terms of technical capacity to do the testing of these things. But also, you know, we keep talking about these things, but do we have sufficient research to tell us, for instance, where are the challenges and how are they being addressed by the border? Kind of the research that is not just on paper, the research that informs real practice. You get it? Many people do research, but where does it end? Makerere, Chambogo, and all these institutions, Naro, a lot of research exists. But how are we using that research? How are we disseminating? How is research making sense? You get it? So I would implore academic institutions and research entities not just do research for spending money for research. We need to do research that is informing us of what is actually happening, but also to innovatively come up with solutions. I know that NARO, for instance, over the years has developed a solution for aflatoxins, what we call AflaSafe. But in the last 10 years, I've been hearing about it. But the traders and the farmers have no access to AflaSafe. A lot of money invested in that kind of research, but it's not helping because it is not being adopted by the East African community. We are not using it. That is here in labs, it is there. So the issue of research, how are we doing research? And how are we using the research to actually inform? And
so the issue there that comes in is the dissemination of the results we get.
The utilization.
Yeah. Yes. Is it able to reach people?
Exactly.
Because if it doesn't reach, no one is going to use it. They don't know what is happening.
Exactly. It's a publication.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then maybe the issue of advocacy. How are we doing advocacy? This lady tells us about the challenges at the border. We know, she has told us, and they have continually informed us. But how are we handling them? There are issues of non-tariff barriers at the border there. Look at the issue of packaging. How do we package our food? Kenya might have a standard on packaging, and so that standard must be the same to Uganda because we are giving the food. And Tanzania the same, and maybe Southern Sudan. Now you may find a non-tariff barrier on packaging. So they say, no, if you don't package like this product doesn't go to country X. But if for us we have a different standard, how are we going to meet that same standard? So the issue is, how do we harmonize the issues like packaging to have the same standard? Very soon you'll hear that Kenya has what we call a nutrient profiling model, and Uganda doesn't have. So what that means, they can come up with front of pack warning labels, and we don't have that. So our traders will keep on packaging the way they have been packaging, and yet in Kenya, the packaging has changed to front of pack warning labels. So if Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, South Sudan, and all the East African community, if we don't adopt the same packaging, it becomes a barrier to the traders, and so it becomes more expensive. What about the weights and measures? We have standards around weights and measures. But you find that a particular country needs a particular weight of eggs, and our traders do not have that weight. Now the question is, so where will the eggs go? They'll tell you, no, for us we want these grams. Now our traders have higher or less. So how are we going to deal with that kind of constraint? So those kind of non-tariff barriers have to be broken down, and then we must have kind of a harmonized standards for everything. We have tried to develop so many standards, but are they harmonized? That what works in Uganda must work in Kenya. Let me just give you another quick example. Kenya last month banned over 77 chemicals, agrochemicals. And then Kenya restricted over 200 chemicals. But now Uganda has not banned the 77, and we have not restricted the 200. So it will mean that we shall continue using them, and yet Kenya will keep bouncing back the products that might be having traces of those kind of molecules. So you see that the issue of East African harmonization needs to be real, off the books, but it comes to principle, it comes to reality, that we have a particular product or particular business entities, and so we follow the same trend. If it is registration of a company or registration of these entities, business entities, do we have the same paperwork that is required for this trader, for instance, to be able to undertake trade in another country? Are traders able to cross easily with their products? Are these traders having the same kind of tax holidays or tax whatever it is, exemptions? By the way, if the exemptions exist, because for instance, I know if you're trading in vegetables, I think you can freely move your vegetables from Kenya to Uganda and likewise. But are traders aware? Do they have this information? Or they are continuously bribing the officers at the border to be able to trade? The issue of corruption still remains a barrier to trade. And actually, it is one of the problems we have in food safety. Because the more this person has a product which is illegal, and they are paying an officer to take it to another country, people in that country will eat it at the expense of the corruption of 5,000 that was given somewhere. So it's a whole mess if we don't look at it from a broader perspective. If you go to the border points, you've been there, and Madam here knows that at the border, you will find people, for instance, having maize, but drying it on the road in dust, even when there is a warehouse or something, but you find young girls, young boys, children, women looking for survival. And no, they are drying their produce there, cars are passing and whatever. How shall we meet the standard of this maize which is dried wrongly in another country? But do you think we don't have officers in those places? We have them. But are they doing sufficient work to build the capacity? Secondly, are we even enforcing the law? We have the laws that are supposed to protect these ladies, but also we have the laws that are supposed to protect us, the consumers.
Actually, you enforce and even you monitor.
Exactly, there is need for monitoring and enforcement. In fact, there is enforcement and monitoring. Now the question is, when we have the laws, when we have the standards, are they being monitored? Are they being enforced? Why are they even being evaluated? By the way, are we even evaluating? Because we may be doing things, but we're not even seeing the implication of these things. So technically, the barriers can be broken down. The barriers can be sensitized about, like we can tell people about them. Even the benefits in terms of the taxes or whatever, communities need information as much as possible. Which programs do we have for awareness? How often are they? There's a tendency of projectizing things. Oh, there's a project by ESAF, and then they're doing awareness, but it's for 1 year. You get it? Yeah. But the government's mandate is to keep all of us safe and healthy and running in our country or in our countries. So how often are the awareness messages running? How often do we do capacity building? How often do we meet people to dialogue on these issues? How often can we, for instance, have our traders here versus the traders the other side? Which platforms do they have to share?
There are so many platforms.
Exactly. So do we leverage those platforms?
For example, they can go to farmer groups, down to the farmer. Yes. They can also pass through for this information to be disseminated, since there's lack of awareness. Yes. They can also go to cooperatives. These are already structures existing. They can also go to associations. We have circles. That's how the information can go up the grassroots, so that we tell them about food safety and food security. Otherwise, people's health, change starts with us. So if we don't change, then what will happen next?
Yeah, and Bernard, maybe I just want you to re-echo. You talked about the mandate of the government, and I think I'll just want you to look in the camera and re-echo that, because it is important for them to know that they're supposed to protect us.
You see, mandate is not just by word, it is constitutional mandate. Constitutional mandate. If you look at our constitution, for instance, chapter 22, it's objective 22, it talks about this food thing. And it tells us the mandate of government, that government shall ensure that the population has access to safe and nutritious food. Safe, nutritious, and adequate food. And that is the mandate, constitutional mandate. Now, it also spells out, in fact, in that objective number 22, one of the provisions there is that government shall ensure mass awareness. That is how it is written in the Constitution. Mass awareness on food security. So there is no way such a mandate, which is constitutional, can just be forgotten. So us as civil society, we shall come and go, but government will stay here. So we want to implore government to actually take on the primary mandate of assuring consumer protection, assuring that our people have access to safe, nutritious, and adequate food. First of all, beyond the Constitution, we are also signatories to, there is a food law. There is, I think it's a global law. Okay, it's actually a right to adequate food. It's a human right. And so we're even signatories to that as a country. So there is no way we can run away from the principles of assuring that our community members have access to safe, nutritious, and adequate food. So government has, in all its plans, you must budget for awareness creation. You must budget for capacity building. You must even recruit people to do this work. Look, we have nutritionists, for instance, a whole cadre called nutritionists. They have been trained 4 years in a university, and their role is to create and empower communities to have access to safe, nutritious, and adequate food. But government has not recruited them. These are supposed to be recruited at all levels, basically, because they are the gatekeepers of awareness to the communities on which kind of food, how to manage food, how to ensure that food is actually maintained at safer levels. But if we do not recruit enough staff to do this work, what do you expect? The civil society will come and go tomorrow. They will come and run a project of 6 months and they disappear. But this is a government that is here, paka last. So how do we embed food safety, quality of food in our frameworks? Ministry of Trade, you have a role to play because food is being traded. Food should not just be looked at as a commodity. Food should be looked at in terms of human right. People have a right to access safe food. But the Ministry of Trade, of course, UNBS is under that ministry. They have to make sure that the packaging is worked on. Issue of preservation for food, issue of transportation of food. So there are many ministries that have to come in there. Ministry of Trade, Ministry of Transport. Can you imagine a human being transporting cement and food on the same truck? And then they stop him at a border point and then gives 5,000 to somebody, and then a truck of cement with posho goes through, and people have access to that kind of food? Why on earth would we do that? So the Ministry of Internal Affairs comes in. The Ministry of Security and whatever comes in. The Ministry of Agriculture comes in. The Ministry of Health comes in. We cannot keep, for instance, using hazardous pesticides in producing food. Hazardous. And we know, but the Ministry of Agriculture is silent. The Ministry of Health is silent. The Ministry of Trade is silent. And at the end of the day, traders lose a lot of money. You know that last year, for instance, we lost $60 million because of rejects of vegetables. Why? Because our vegetables at the border points were high in chemical residues, and so they were bounced. Do you know $60 million in this economy? What that means? Why are we losing the money? Because we are not meeting the standards, because our people are not being told about the standards, because we are not enforcing the capacity to test before the food can go out there. Unfortunately, all food that is bounced comes back to the population and we eat it.
Wow, it's a very, very interesting discussion, and I want us to bring it to an end. And maybe you could just share your one statement that you can probably address to the consumers, because it is very important. We as consumers, we create the demand for the standard of products that we want on the market. So we can have a statement from you and then from Badru, then we can bring this to an end.
All right.
Yeah.
I think that one important thing that we must note is that all of us are consumers. That is the first principle. Secondly, we determine the market. We are supposed to determine the market. So my fellow consumers, my advice would be every time you're going to the market or to that shop or to that supermarket, wherever, but you're going to access food, do for me one thing. Critically look at what you're going to buy, reject it if it doesn't meet the standard. If 10 consumers rejected a product for not meeting the standard, and we go to the next businessman who has a standard product, and we keep buying that one, this other person will change. And that is the philosophy of consumers. We need to refuse all products that are not safe, that are not meeting the standard, and we go and buy those which are safe for us. The more we do that, and we reject these ones, people will sort themselves, traders will sort themselves. And I think that is the power of the consumers. If we know our power as consumers, we can influence everything on the market. We can influence our government. We can influence everybody. So consumer protection should be considered in business, and consumer health must be part of the business agenda. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Bernard. Ms. Badru, what do you have to tell us as we wrap up?
Thank you so much, Naomi.
Yeah.
What I would like to say is that for us, fellow business people and traders, let us make sure that when we are purchasing any type of good or product, we should meet the standard. We should refuse those fake, substandard foods. If we set a standard and we make a change starts with us. So we should make sure that we buy products that are of standard, and let us sell something which is healthy, safe, and nutritious, not junk, not destructive. So that's what we should do. And then we should follow all the food safety procedures in business, right from post-harvesting and also transportation, storage. We should all have all those check. The preservatives, they should all meet the standards of health. We should also look at even when we are processing, we avoid bribes. We should be assertive and know what we are supposed to do. And then also we should also abide by the government laws and procedures, so that we can meet all the standards of business. And also, lastly, we should also look at self-care and wellness, because when you're dealing with the food, relationship is in the stomach and is in the food. A hungry person cannot discuss well. So for our country, since we are going to these big days, we should do good business, not fake business. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Badru, for joining us, and Bernard, thank you for joining us on the Spotlight today. My takeaway is mostly built on awareness. We have very beautiful policy documents lying somewhere, but of the regional population, how much of that is aware of the policy frameworks that have been put in place, or how much is even being implemented? Can we really trace back and say that in this particular policy framework, this is how much we have achieved? Or we are just waiting to review. After 10 years, we review and say this didn't work, but we don't have evidence that it didn't work. So dear viewers, thank you so much for joining us today. Again, this podcast is brought to you by ESAF Uganda in partnership with the Alliance for Food Sovereignty in Africa. Let us keep the discussion going. Thank you.
Thank you for watching The Spotlight. Stay connected with ESAF Uganda as we empower small-scale farmers. Visit our website and follow us on social media for more updates.